Welcome to the Spiritually Embodied Leader Podcast. I'm Cynthia Gutierrez, a mom, dancer, dark side trance freak, and the creator of Embodied Ritual. I love to help conscious moms, healers, and highly sensitive people like you regulate your nervous system so you can embody your true essence, align with your higher calling, and finally become the parent you've always dreamed of being. Inside this podcast, we're going to be shining light on the topics of embodiment, subconscious mind, ritual and ceremony, cyclical living, and returning to nature so that you can enjoy life with the fullness of who you are. Thank you so much for being here. Now, let's get into it. Hey, what is up? Oh my gosh, it feels so good to be here. I hope you're having a beautiful day, evening, a beautiful time wherever you are. And thank you so much for tuning in. This is so exciting to announce the very first episode of the Spiritually Embodied Leader Podcast. Wow, this is such a culminating moment, and you're going to be finding out very soon here within, this episode and especially the next 3 episodes as I am officially launching the podcast with the very first 4 episodes. I am putting this one on a week early. Because I just, wanted to get the podcast on the platforms and you can find me and also hear about the Winter Solstice Embodied Ceremony launch party that is happening. You guessed it, December 21st, Winter Solstice. And so, this episode right now is mostly about getting to know me and what has brought me here. And, just get an idea of how I can be able to help you and support from my own experience and my own studies. But before I get into it, of course, I want to share more about the Winter Solstice Embodied Ceremony. That launch party is going to be happening at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's going to be 90 minutes long. I'm going to host it on Zoom so that we can all be together, on camera. It's going to be very interactive, right? Embodiment. I'm going to have a whole lot of not a whole lot, but we're going to do some practices together to give thanks and energetically complete the yearly cycle. And to intentionally plant seeds, to make space for our desires in the new cycle, in the new year. And of course, to celebrate the podcast. So definitely sign up with the link in my bio. And you can also register on my website. I'm going to have all those links in the show notes, as well as, on the social media, Instagram for sure, and Facebook, of course. And also, when you register, you're going to be able to get the information on how to participate in the giveaway. So this giveaway is a one-on-one hypnosis session with a recording. So it's valued at $222. We're going to be able to meet privately to craft a hypnosis session for any topic that you want. If there's one particular topic, subject in your life, one area in your life that you want some support with to reprogram your subconscious mind to, get the benefits or to manifest what it is that you want in your life, then we'll be able to meet for the first session to get the finer details of what it is that you want. And then I'm going to craft the hypnosis session. And then we're going to meet a second time where I will do the induction and we'll go through the whole hypnosis experience. I'm also going to record that session so that afterwards I'm going to edit the recording so that I just pull out the induction part and I'm going to send it to you. And so you will have that recording whenever you want. You can re-listen to that entire hypnosis session. Well, just the induction part. So you press play, get hypnotized, get extra support, so you can deepen your hypnosis experience however many times you want. So that is the giveaway, and I'm super excited. I'm going to be announcing the winner at the Winter Solstice Embodied Ceremony launch party. So definitely sign up, and I can't wait to be with you. I'm so stoked, and that will be the official launch of the podcast as well. So episodes 2, 3, and 4 are also going to air that day. And that is the beginning of this super cool podcast that I feel like I have been getting visions of this podcast at the beginning of 2022. And for various reasons, I just didn't go for it, but it was actually in Hawaii earlier this year. It just was clear to me. I was like, oh my God, this year, December 21st, winter solstice, is going to be my 10-year anniversary of my spiritual awakening. And let me tell you, it's an epic freaking story. Okay. And I'm going to be sharing it, I think, on the third episode that happened in Egypt. Okay. It's a really epic story. So I'll get into all the fun details about that in the third episode. So make sure to tune in for that one. But yeah, 10 years since that happened. And I'm just like, how am I going to celebrate? It's like a really big thing because it's completely shaped who I am today. And it completely changed my life back then in 2012. So one day it just dawned on me. Oh yeah, in Hawaii, I was just like, oh, the podcast, of course. So yeah, thanks for like being here, being a part of it, for tuning in, celebrating with me. And I am just so excited. And I just want to share more about, what has brought me here to this moment and why or how the spiritually embodied leader within me has come to be. And it's like this podcast is really dedicated to activating the spiritually embodied leader within you, and just awakening that within the collective. And so just to give you an idea of like where all of this started, I mean, really, part of me kind of hesitated to share this because it started since I was a kid. And so there's so much that has contributed to who I am today, of course, but there are some key aspects that has really just been a core thread in my life. And I feel like embodiment in general really started at a very young age because I started dancing at a very young age at a performing arts elementary school. And it just had such a deep impact in my life because I was actually born, I was considered a late talker. Okay, so I spoke so little as a child that my family legit thought I was mentally disabled, and they enrolled me into a special education preschool. And so I got to work with a speech therapist for an entire academic year. And by the end of that, they're like, oh, she's fine. Actually, I just needed extra support with my speech. And to be real, like, I wonder, I've never been tested for like, what is that? Not like autism. Well, yes, autism, but what's the opposite of neurotypical? For some reason, I've talked about it plenty of times. But anyway, obviously not that important right now. But anyway, yeah. So there was so much questions and pressure and worry about my voice and speaking that once I went into a performing arts elementary school and I did a little bit of music, I did a little bit of theater. And when I started dancing, oh my goodness, it's like this whole new version of me would just come out and play and just have so much fun and connect with people in a way that I had never been able to connect with. And so I danced. It was just the love of my life. And it was the only thing in my life that I felt like really helped me get through life. It made me resilient. Yeah. And I feel like it was a really big healing practice that I had in my life too, it just so happened to do that for me. Right. I was so young. I didn't really know what was going on and why it helped me so much because it just really, the amount of complex emotions that I was going through and traumatic experiences that were happening, like dance was the only thing that I was able to turn to in life, to just help me through it. And so once I got into middle school, they didn't have dance, but my mom knew that's all I wanted to do. So she enrolled me into a dance studio. So I would go to dance classes after school. And then in high school, luckily they had dance and I was able to sign out of physical education. I'm like, I don't want to do PE. I just want to dance. And so I danced all 4 years of high school. And in addition to going to dance studios after school. And yeah, it was just very obvious. So that's just all I wanted to do. And it was just interesting too, because even though like dance was the love of my life, I was still, there was still some discomforts in it too. Like there was a lot of cliques, right? There was like popularity contests going on. And I was just like, I didn't really have any close friends. I mean, there's maybe one or two people that I can reflect back on that like stood out to me, but like I don't talk to them anymore. But it was like I was only there because of how alive and how good I felt when I danced. It was a very personal practice for me. Um, and then I found out I could declare it as a major. And I was like, hell yeah. So in community college, I declared it my major. But then something started shifting for me. I was just like, I started noticing more the clicks. And for some reason, when I did hip hop and modern and jazz, it's a very like, even though I have a whole lot of respect for those, okay, and that's when I started doing ballet too. And I have so much respect for the technique and the styles, right? And the cultures that come along with it. But it was very entertainment based. And not to like put that down or anything, again, like I hold a lot of respect. But for me at that time, it wasn't fulfilling anymore. And I was just like, oh my goodness, it was just a lot of like internal conflict that was going on for me where I was just like, why am I even doing this? Like, why am I here? And it was very entertainment based, like me, look at all the cool tricks that I can do. And I just didn't care about that. And I had a point where I was like, am I going to have to change my major? And it just felt like a really big identity crisis too, because it was just so a part of who I was and still am. Yet I just knew, I'm like, for some reason, I mean, obviously that was a void. I've just started learning about the void through my shaman, Makosi. If you know the royal shaman, shout out to freaking Makosi, man. Anyway, I entered a void in my life. And right when I was about to change my major, I got accepted into a university. Getting into a university is a really big deal. And so I was like, okay, how about I just get into a university? And if I really want to switch out my major, then I'll just do it there, right? And so that was about 2010 when I transferred into SDSU. And when I got there, it was like the answers to my prayers were just exposing them. And once I got there, I was so relieved because that particular school was a postmodern dance school. And I say postmodern because it was pretty avant-garde at the time. I mean, I don't know if I'd call it that still, but it was a very contemporary school. And, I just noticed where there's some students that would come in and they were very, about the pop culture, and they're just like, what the hell is this? Like it was just too modern for them, too experimental. And for those of us that were intrigued by this stuff, we're like, whoa, okay, this is so interesting. But that was when I started my somatic education. And so I was exposed to all sorts of body-based modalities, like Feldenkrais and body-mind centering and Alexander technique and just so many different somatic practices that just started really begin my embodied transformation. And because I was in the university full time, it's like I was immersed in it. And so I just felt like I started changing and my awareness started shifting and my consciousness was shifting too. And I felt like the amount of self-awareness that I was building and cultivating in that time primed me for a spiritual awakening. And so in 2010, I went to university, and then 2012, that's when I began my spiritual awakening. And that's a whole story that I will get into. And so even though like the university did have technique style classes, it had the modern, it had the ballet, and sometimes they'd bring in other facilitators to do hip hop and stuff. It had that embodiment twist to it. It had the embodied style woven in. I remember my ballet teacher, she had curtains in front of the mirrors and she would cover the mirrors with the curtains. And she would be like, hey, stop looking at yourself in the mirror. Close your eyes, go within and feel what you're doing. Feel what you're experiencing right now. And, there was just so much attention on how we looked, right? All the way up until that point. Like, that's what I meant, that like it was very entertainment based. It was very like, I'm here to entertain you. Look at all my cool tricks and everything. And it was like, they didn't care about that. They didn't care about how many pirouettes I can do, if I could do the splits. I mean, it did have a factor, of course, and it was cool to be able to do that. Yet that's not what mattered to them. What was more important was, and potent, what I came to find out too, it was more potent for me to be present, for me to be fully aware of myself and the space around me and the dancers around me, and even having that embodied presence with the audience when we're performing. Like, it just really started to expand what I considered dance was, even, like, when are we and when are we not dancing, right? Like, I was starting to dance without music. Like, do you have to dance to music, or can you just dance now, right? And so it was just really expanding my consciousness. And I felt like come 2012, so much started to shift for me. At the beginning of the year, I decided to, it dawned on me. It was very clear. I woke up one moment where I was like, oh my goodness, it's time for me to break up with my boyfriend who I was with for 8 years. And I will never forget, I could take you exactly to the street, the time of day. I could tell you all the specifics of what happened in that moment when I was walking, and I was just like feeling the fear, feeling the trembling inside happening to me whenever I thought about being away from that person, being away from my boyfriend at the time. And I was so afraid and was just like, oh my God, what's going to happen to me? And when I became aware of what I was doing in my body and the thoughts that I was having, it was like, boom, like I just felt like I woke up in that moment, and I was like, what the hell? Like, what am I so afraid about? And like, that's not healthy, that's when I realized, I'm like, yo, like, that's not okay. Like, I should be okay being alone, I'm like, and I just knew that I wasn't going to be with that person for the rest of my life. And it was just moments like that started happening that year that brought me to eventually going on a trip to Egypt. And I will get into that story come episode 3, but it was like 2012 was a really big awakening time for me. And once I went to Egypt and I came back, I also packed my bags to go to Australia the very next month for that first semester in 2013, because I was studying abroad. I got accepted into an arts conservatory there, super epic. But also once I got there, I started noticing patterns within myself that were extremely unhealthy. And I was just like, wow, I realized that I didn't want that for myself anymore. And a few things happened, which I may or may not get into at a different point in this podcast, but I probably will. It's just, there's just so much to say, but I just felt like that's when I started making really important decisions in my life. And even though I didn't know how to go about it then, that's when my intuition was just like, hey, it's time to change. Like, is this really what you want for yourself? And I had those moments to myself where I just got quiet, and I just became introspective and just really felt into like, what do I want for myself? And even though I knew I wanted something different for myself, I didn't know how I was going to go about it. I didn't even know where to begin. I was just like, within my heart of hearts, deep down within myself, I was like, yes, I'm ready for a change. And it was that decision that really it was like all the different chess pieces started to reestablish themselves. And I felt like the universe was like, okay, energetically, I knew I was ready for a change. And so, come later in that 2013 year, other things started happening for me. And eventually 2015, I graduated college. And I just got so excited to do all sorts of different stuff that I didn't have time, like as a full-time college student, dancing all the time. And as you know, for you performing artists, like rehearsals and performances, like my goodness, it's such a busy schedule. So after I graduated, I traveled to New York and I started yoga teacher training. I started doing some energy healing certifications. I did like my Reiki 1 and stuff like that. And different things happen. Oh yeah, and I met a life coach for the very first time. I'm definitely going to share that story. It's a really, really beautiful story. And I just felt like that life coach also was a pivotal moment in my life that just changed. It changed me. And the next day of meeting that coach and working with him, I actually met my partner who I'm with now. And I didn't know at the time that I would raise a family with, and it's a whole thing. So yeah, it was just like so much was happening. And then come 2017, within those 2 years of just exploring and learning new things and going to different festivals, I eventually started to date my now partner, Cody. And within 4 months of us dating, and mind you, he was living on the road, and like maybe we saw each other like twice a month or something, I became pregnant. And it was a really interesting moment for me because all the way up until that very moment when I found out I was pregnant, I was just like, oh yeah, well, you know, I did my best with tracking my period. I also got off of birth control I was taking it for 13 years. And when I got off my birth control, my period was so irregular. Oh my God. But I was trying to track it so that I can do, birth control naturally. But that didn't happen very well. And so anyway, I was just like, yeah, I'll take, the morning after pill. And yeah, I did not think I was ready at all to become a mom. But I actually remember vividly the dream that I had of giving birth to a baby girl. And so, yeah, I became pregnant come 2016. So that was only a year after I graduated. Made an agreement with Cody and we became partners. And come 2017, I gave birth to Lily. And it was a really beautiful experience. And also that first year of motherhood, my whole life turned inside out, upside down. And I've just had a really, really hard time. I mean, I felt so lost, so depressed. I was having panic attacks. And it was just, so many times begging for help, praying for help. And I did my very best, but, I wasn't equipped well enough. And of course, when I became pregnant, I did a little bit of like prenatal yoga, but I just stepped out of my dance practice. And I just felt like becoming a mom is such a big identity shift. Everything changes. The values, like even at the subconscious level, everything changes. And I just had a really hard time with that. And come 2018, after Lily was almost a year old, I went to this 18-day event in Panama. It was a festival called Tribal Gathering. And Cody convinced me to go. And so he took us. And Lily was like 11 months old at the time. So we traveled from San Diego, California, all the way to Panama. And I remember traveling there and I'm just like, what the hell am I doing in my life? Like, who am I? And I was so engulfed being a mom and I just couldn't stand it anymore. And I'm just like, you know what? I just kind of surrendered it all. I dropped the identity of the dancer. I even dropped the identity of being a yoga instructor and just everything. All I knew what to do instinctually as well was just be mom. But I just kind of let go. And with holding intentions and setting prayers of just like, God, please help me, while I'm in Panama. And it was a really beautiful event. There's like 60 tribes from around the world that gather and share their culture or like their songs and their culture and their medicines. And it's just it was such a beautiful experience. And while I was there, I was able to just sporadically host workshops. And the only thing I really knew in depth that I could just kind of write down on a piece of paper was dance and movement. And so I did that. And it was like by the end of the 18 days, that final weekend, there's a psytrance celebration, right? And so throughout that time that I like spent there with the people and the tribes and sharing my workshops, and then dancing my heart out by the last weekend, people were just like, whoa, Cynthia, like I didn't realize how much of a dancer you are. Like, and they, it was just obvious that dancing and movement was definitely still a part of the gifts that I'm here to share with the world. And so I knew that it was going to stay with me, although it was going to take shape in a way that it differently than what I had expected, right? Because like coming out of university, I thought, oh, I'm going to be a dance teacher at a dance studio because that's all I knew, right? But it's like spirit had other plans for me. And so I'm just like, okay, like I reestablished my trust with it. And with this deeper purpose that I sense within myself. And so when I came back, Lily turned 1 year old, and immediately after, I just got this big urge to start my own business. And I'm just like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to dance. I want to like share all this stuff that I know, right? And so eventually I just hired a business coach, and I started buying business programs, like online programs, and I was just trying to figure it out. And eventually, I was like, oh, I know how to do this, 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 and this. And I was trying to do them all at once, separately. And I'm just like, no, no, no. And I wanted to like combine them all. So eventually that's how embodied ritual kind of came to be. And so I ran with that. And I just feel like embodied ritual has been taking shape and form throughout the years since, the end of 2018. But come 2019, I went back to tribal gathering, and that was the first time I hosted my embodied ceremony. And it's a little differently than how I do it now. Of course, when it's online, it's just different online than what I do in person. But yeah, it just was like a really beautiful full circle moment, being there and hosting that in a way that I never thought I would. And while it was a really exciting time to, be able to offer the embodied ceremony and feel like, oh, okay, this is the kind of style of facilitation that I want to do, interweaving ceremony space and doing embodiment work and dancing and moving and holding intentions and opening a sacred circle and all of this stuff, right? All the things that I love. Soon after coming home from that tribal gathering in 2019 and being like, okay, I'm going to run with this, and like keep building upon this embodied ritual business. Come 2020, good old 2020, I started sitting with ayahuasca. And I knew ayahuasca had actually been kind of tapping me on the shoulder for a little while. But I was breastfeeding, and, it was just little things that were coming up that I'm like, it's not time, it's not time. And then it was like, actually, I'm ready. I stopped breastfeeding, and I just felt the call. And so I started going, sitting with ayahuasca. The first 2 times, I think, were really lovely. And I was just like, wow, like this, I really loved my experience with ayahuasca, and especially in being in ceremony with people and being so close with community and medicine songs, and it was just everything that I wanted when gathering with people in that way. Although come in December 2020, for some reason, man, December is such a rebirth for me. Of course, it is my birthday month, so not surprised there. But come December 2020, I did an ayahuasca ceremony that really, really, really shook me to my core. And I felt like it brought me into this new journey, this new depth, this new realm of my healing journey that I did not see coming at all. And I feel like because I had held so many intentions of like, oh, stepping up as a leader and holding space for people and guiding people and helping other people, right? It was obvious that there was some more work that I needed to dive into. And so with that December 2020 journey, she basically revealed some unprocessed trauma that needed to be addressed. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of like what happened in the ceremony, but when I came home, it was like I kept getting triggered. I'll say that. Kept getting triggered, activated in ceremony. And I left that ceremony just feeling just really uncomfortable and actually having PTS kind of flashes. And so that journey, the ayahuasca journey in December 2020, unearthed a whole lot of unprocessed trauma. I mean, I don't want to say a whole lot. It wasn't a variety of it, but it was a particular area of my life that I have not taken care of, that needed to be tended to. And it wasn't even just about that area of my life, but also me becoming trauma informed as a facilitator. Yeah, it's very, very important, especially someone working with the body. And coming home after that ayahuasca journey, I was having a lot of PTS symptoms, post-traumatic stress symptoms. And I needed professional help, actually. It honestly was a psychotic break. And I couldn't really take care of my family. I was in no shape or form to take care of anyone, especially even myself. And so it took me about a week for me to reach out and be like, dude, I am not okay. Like that had never really happened to me before. Not to that degree. And so anyway, I reached out for help. I was able to get enough support for me to regulate my nervous system. I didn't realize that was what was happening at the time. But soon after, come 2021, at the very beginning of that year, I started a year-long study with Embodiment Unlimited with my now mentor, Mark Walsh. And one of their programs that I did for certification of embodiment coaching, they were like, hey, yeah, working with the body is cool and all, and so needed. And it's crucial that we are trauma informed. If you're going to work with the body, you got to learn about trauma because they're very much closely connected. And so when I started my trauma education and just being trauma informed, I was like, oh, this is what's happened. Okay, no wonder. I better understand myself. I better understood the situation. I just had a better grasp on like what was actually happening and unfolding for me. And so, yeah, I finished that course. I also did more trauma education, and then I started diving into the subconscious mind as well and got like my NLP certification. That was earlier this year, actually in 2022. And then I sat with ayahuasca April of 2022, and I was a little nervous, but like after all that time, after that like a year and a half of doing trauma education and learning how to like regulate my nervous system and all this stuff, I was like, okay, well, if anything comes up, at least I have these tools, right? I have these practices. I know how to help myself. And so I went to go sit with ayahuasca, and of course she was like, hey, no, you need to work with someone to actually like heal these wounds. And so I don't want to kind of, at this point right now, I don't want to get into that story of what happened then that made me realize like, oh, no, I need some one-on-one support with someone long-term to like go through a whole journey of trauma healing. So yeah, I took her advice. Thank you, ayahuasca. I finally listened. And along with, doing a trauma coaching certification as well, I realized, oh, okay, I understood it a little more. There's so much nuance with trauma. And fortunately, I found a trauma coach who was able to help me with my complex PTSD around sexual trauma. And so I started a whole program with her. And I'm just so grateful because I feel like having that experience with ayahuasca, who was just like, hey, it's time to heal this now, go get help. And like, I've heard a lot of stories of people healing their own trauma with ayahuasca, but she made it very clear. She's like, like that wasn't her work to do. It was time for me to work with someone else. And so I've been doing that, and I'm just so freaking grateful because I feel like it's equipped me. It's giving me so much perspective and compassion and understanding with myself, with my family, with other people, with humans in general. And I'm just like, wow, just wow. And that's how I've arrived to now. And getting to celebrate my 10-year anniversary of my spiritual awakening. And I'm just so grateful. And it's such a pleasure and honor to be able to share this with you. So yeah, I'm super excited for what's to come on this podcast. And of course, I am open to your questions. So if you have any questions for me that you'd love for me to unpack and shine some light on this podcast, please send me a DM. I'd love that. And I just can't wait to bring on experts too. Like, honestly, I really want to bring on my trauma coach to do an interview with her, because trauma education needs to be everywhere. It needs to be in our public education. It needs to be in the medical system. It needs to be freaking everywhere. If everyone was just even a little bit trauma informed, oh my God, this world would be a completely different place. So anyway, yeah, I'm just so excited to, share what's helped me embody my true essence and align with my higher calling and finally become the person that I've always wanted to be, and also be the parent, the mom that I've always wanted to be, and just share this vision that I have for this world. And I'm just so thankful to be able to do this here with you. So thank you so much for tuning in. And to wrap this up, make sure to sign up for the Winter Solstice Embodied Ceremony launch party. It's happening December 21st at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's 90 minutes. And of course, once you register, you're going to get the information to be able to win the giveaway of the one-on-one hypnosis session with that recording. So make sure to sign up with the link in my bio, as well as my website. And I'm sure I'll pop it into the show notes of this particular episode. And I am just so excited. Awesome. Okay. Have a beautiful day. Much love. Mwah. Thank you so much for tuning in. May this show continue to awaken the spiritually embodied leader within you. If you enjoyed this episode and you want others to enjoy it too, then take a screenshot, share it on your stories, and tag me at Embodied Ritual. Now, if you'd really like to support me in helping more people, please rate this show and leave a review on iTunes. Thanks again. Let's connect soon.